This is Patriots Playbook.
The legend.
Sometimes you need to be hit up the side of the head with an idiot stick to realize it, right? Coming into the stadium today, what did they do to the parking? What is the deal?
I don't know. There's always something going on here.
They finally find a job they could give to Malik Cunningham? You make a very good point. Shocking. Did I just say that about him? You could have bet me any amount of money that we would not get the word frittata into the show today.
Now, here's your host of Patriots Playbook, John Rook.
What other words can we try to get into the show today? Sucky, sucky, sucky. Would that be a good one today? I don't know. I'm just kind of wondering,
Wow. I think it's funny how a lot of people call us sunshine.com. You know that. And for the first 40 minutes of PU, we discussed a real cash spending and how where the Patriots rank, and now that's how we start this show. So shove that in your sunshine.com pipe.
Sunshine.com pipe, right, exactly.
Sunshine.
I wanted to come in at least kind of start off today and have something to rant and rave about, but I'm kind of at the point where I'm kind of like, it's not purposeful, It's just not. It's not solving anything. We've been so blessed. I've said this so many times. We've been so blessed to have covered this team as we have in this venue and this particular program, and this .com radio era that we've had over 23 years now. To have had a championship level football team, and then this year we're experiencing what Patriots fans, for lack of, for better or for worse, what Patriots fans experienced back in the 1980s, some in a little bit in the 70s, certainly in the 60s, when they were even still the Boston Patriots. I've told the story several times that the last really just what is it worth season, why are we doing this season that I remember going through was the year that I did Rod Rust's TV show. And we only did 3 shows during the year because there's just no way we were filling in the kind of a content that you would need to do a weekly show for a team that in a program that was 1-15.
Now we do 3 shows a week.
And and so I'm just like, I want to try to put things in a little bit of perspective, but at the same time, there is a little part of me that says, well, so what are we going to do about this? And we're caught in a netherworld that I'm just not sure we're going to be able to extract ourselves from, at least for the foreseeable future. So I think, what does it mean in the big picture? We all want to know what it means in the big picture. How much more are we going on here? That kind of thing, like Bill is famous to say. I don't know. I can't answer that question. So there is another part of me that decided today, maybe we just put blinders on and go week to week, just like, they just allegedly do on game plans. I mean, this is Washington week. And what's the over-under on me slipping and calling them the Redskins today? I'd said I'm not going to count that one. That doesn't count. I think I set my own number this morning at 1.5.
That's
Would you go over or under?
I'm gonna go under. I believe in you.
You believe in me?
I think
I'd go over.
Still calling it Twitter.
I think the Commanders is easier for a lot of people than the Los Angeles Chargers. For some reason, the San Diego Chargers.
I
really
see,
get
but
people.
but see, I go even worse than that. When I see LAC, I call them the Los Angeles Clippers.
Oh yeah, that's fair.
Because that's what they were when I was in the NBA. They were the LA Clippers.
Yeah, that's fair.
So I'm, I don't know. I'm kind of just sort of bamboozled.
Yeah, that's fair.
Nonplussed.
I don't know what that means, but I'm sure it's true.
You can Google it. I think it means that you're just confused more than anything else. Not sure which way to go. Are you at all surprised? I mean, I'm not on the trade deadline. I'm not surprised that this team did nothing, because there's a part of me that says, well, sure, if you got tradable commodities, why don't you get rid of them? But as Bill warned us, it takes 2 to make a trade. And then on top of that, you're 2-6. You're literally the worst team in the AFC right now. Who the hell do you have that somebody else wants?
Yeah, I thought, look, obviously those players that everybody keeps talking about from the 2020 draft class, Uche, Duggar, Onwenu, those guys I think probably had a little bit of interest, especially Uche. But I also wondered if some teams would have been interested in a Hunter Henry, a Zeke Elliott,
It was
Mike
my
Gesicki.
understanding that Elliott did have several tire kickers.
Yeah.
I'm not sure why. I guess there just wasn't enough compensation offered.
Yeah, I mean, we're talking about pick swaps late. Like, you're not giving up anything.
You're not really giving up anything.
Anybody could have had him for like 6 months, or whatever it was, and no, the Patriots signed him in the middle of August.
Was he worth an extra 6th or 7th round pick? Because that's probably what they were getting.
Yeah, I think in Elliott's case, if they did get those, I think there's been some conflicting reports on whether or not they did get calls on Zeke or not. But if they did, if they had some younger backs that they wanted to try to integrate into the offense or maybe get a look at, like a Kevin Harris or Pierre Strong was still here or something like that, then maybe you make that trade. But right now, the only backs that you play are Ramondre and Zeke. Like, that's all you got.
Yeah.
So to give one of those guys up would have been tough. But I'm not surprised. I think the one thing that I agree with that seems to be like the big hysteria or the big take on the deadline and is you do have to pick a lane. Either you're hitting the red button and you're starting all over, or you think that this is worth trying to build with. And the one thing, and this isn't trying to come at it as like rose-colored glasses or anything like that. I'm not waving pom-poms, but I don't necessarily think they're as bad as 2-6. They're not a good team. Like, don't get me wrong, but they've played one of the hardest schedules in the NFL.
They did.
And they played a lot of teams that are established Super Bowl contenders that they got whooped by. Like, there's no doubt about that.
They've fallen short because we knew going in they weren't going to be at that level.
Yeah, and I think a lot of us knew that this opening stretch, this first half of the season, was going to be difficult. Now coming up in the second, and I get that there's no penciled in wins anymore with this team. Like, I'm not telling you that they're penciling in wins by any means, but now you get the Washingtons, the Indies, the Giants, who are not very good right now, Denver, Pittsburgh.
You got teams more on your level.
Yeah, you got the softer part. I hate that term, but the softer part of your schedule is now. Into really, other than like Kansas City, Buffalo, and maybe if the Jets continue to play decently well, or by that point he might be back. Like, Aaron Rodgers might be playing in that week 18 game against the Patriots.
That's what we're hearing.
So regardless, the point being is that did I think they would be 2-6 at this point? No, but I didn't really feel like they would be that much better. Like, maybe they were 4-4 or 3-5, but I really didn't think that they would be that much better.
Here's the thing about 4-4. You bring up 4-4. Let's just say that they are 4-4, and those 2 wins, maybe they managed to squeeze one out in an upset over the Eagles, and maybe they beat the Dolphins in week 2.
Yeah.
And this team is 4-4 right now.
Yeah.
You'd still be screaming. You'd still hear screaming from fans. You'd still be hearing screaming and criticism from the media because it's kind of like, well, they can beat Philadelphia, they can beat Miami, and they still lose like that to New Orleans, or they're just 4-4. Shouldn't they be 5-3 or 6-2? I mean, I feel like there'd still be complaints to be had here, and I think we've become conditioned to naturally complain when this team falls short of sometimes overinflated expectations.
Yeah. I think that's fair. I think that there were a couple games based off of how they unfolded. I can see where you got to like Philly and Miami, but in my head going into the season, I thought that they would have a good chance to beat the Raiders, which I guess ultimately they kind of did. It was a 1-possession game. And then I thought that they would beat New Orleans here at home.
I also thought they would be 4-4 at this stage.
Right.
I did.
So those were the 2 games that swung.
Right.
And then one of them being a 34-0 shellacking here really made it swing.
Yes.
So if you look at the other games they've played this season, and again, this is not like to try to act like, oh, actually they're really good and they're going to be a good team, but all the other games have been really 1-score games, right? Like they, all the other, it's just those 2 blowouts that you look at.
It sort of unevens the playing field.
Yeah. I mean, they lost by 2 touchdowns to Miami.
They were so egregious. And then when you add on the injuries of late, especially Kendrick Bourne being the latest one to go down this weekend, then it's kind of like, wow, where's the hope?
Yeah.
And you've still got, oh my goodness,
9 games.
9 games left to play.
Yeah, I think the hope, and it's a good question. I think for me, if you're a Patriots fan, and look, we have a lot of great listeners that are going to watch and follow and thank God listen to us even if they're not good. If you're those people, I think what you have to do, and this is sort of my theme of the whole week here, the next 9 games is more about deciding who you want to keep on this roster and who you don't. So it's basically is what I'm saying. It's an individual player basis. Now we're evaluating the individual players on the roster.
Right.
So I wouldn't get too caught up in wins and losses because at this point that probably is irrelevant.
Right.
It's more about, is Mac Jones your quarterback of the future? In my opinion, he has 9 games to make the case that they should continue to roll with him next season. And if he plays like he's been playing outside of the Buffalo game, but on the whole for the season, the other 7 games of the year, if he plays like that and they are picking in the top 10 in the draft, they should be looking at quarterbacks.
You would think.
If he plays like he did against Buffalo for the better half of the second half of the season, then maybe it's a different conversation.
Mm-hmm.
And so it starts with the quarterback, but it's not just the quarterback. Like deciding on your pending free agents. Like, is Kyle Duggar going to be here? Is Big Mike going to be here? Is Josh Uche going to be here? Is Hunter Henry going to be here? Like all these guys that are coming up on the end of their contracts that you might have some interest in keeping already. Now is the time for these people and these players to start making a case for being on the 2024 Patriots. So I think that's, if you're a fan of this team and you're looking at what is it that I'm supposed to cling on to, they're probably not going to turn it around. Like they're probably not going to win 10 straight games and turn it around.
I was just going to say, could you see in any scenario this team performing like, say, the Detroit Lions did a year ago?
So I've been clinging to that. The Detroit Lions is a good example. The one I always came back to is the 21 Miami Dolphins, who lost 7 in a row. They are 1-7. They lost 7 in a row, and they won 8 of their last 9 games, and they finished the year 9-8, and they just missed the playoffs. They just missed the playoffs because Pittsburgh tied a game.
Okay.
So the 9-7-1 Steelers went to the playoffs over the 9-8 Miami Dolphins. So it's been done, right? Like it's been done.
Is it statistically possible? Yes.
Yeah.
Is it likely?
No. But I would say that for better or worse, because I know some fans are going to hear this and say, well, they should be tanking and they should be losing, and what good does it do?
I hate that phrase,
what good does it do to be 7-10? And I don't necessarily disagree for the most part.
Those stupid NBA teams that tanked, the Houston Rockets tanked for Ralph Sampson and Akeem Olajuwon. And, I mean, that brought sports to a completely different level because athletes don't tank.
Yeah.
They can't. It is against their very fiber of their very being to go out and perform and not compete at a high level. You cannot do it. You cannot tell me otherwise. The tanking part of it, the dropping, the losing purposely, whatever you want to say, that comes from decisions being made way above their heads and playing people out on the floor. I mean, I know in Houston's case, when I was in the NBA and the Rockets tanked, to be able to, bring in Akeem, Ralph Sampson, that whole group, back during that time. It was because they refused to play anybody but, 75-year-old Elvin Hayes.
Yeah.
I mean, that was basically it. That's why they did what they did. So, that was a management decision. The guys are going out there and busting tail all the time, but it was a management decision to play these guys because we don't want to risk anybody else.
Yeah.
And so if Bill Belichick or Mr. Kraft said, okay, play all these guys or don't play any of these guys, or look, I can understand from one point of view them saying, as you already suggested, this is really all about who we want to keep for next year because we know there's going to be increased cap space and we're going to have extra money. So there's a great opportunity to rebuild this thing and rebuild it quickly. Who on this team right now can be a part of that? That's part of the evaluating process. So let's play those guys. If you want to call that tanking, then it's tanking.
Yeah.
But it's not really tanking.
Right. And so the Lions are a good example. And I think that Dolphins team is a good example. Now, the Dolphins team changed coaches. They fired Brian Flores at the end of that year and hired Mike McDaniel. And then they traded for Tyreek Hill, and the rest is history. Right now, they're one of the best teams in the league. But the general premise is the Lions and the Dolphins stuck with it, right? And they didn't ruin Tua, and they didn't ruin Jared Goff. And then the Lions had another good draft class. They had another strong offseason. The Dolphins did what they did down in Miami with Tyreek Hill and Teron Armstead and all these pieces, Bradley Chubb making all these moves. And now those two teams might play in the Super Bowl in February. So there's other ways to go about it. And if I was the Patriots and if I was a Patriots fan, the easiest path is forward. The easiest path is that for the rest of the season, the next 9 games, Mac Jones plays closer to what he did against Buffalo. He looks like a guy that maybe isn't going to win you games still, but he can win games in this league. And instead of drafting Drake May in the first round, you're drafting Marvin Harrison Jr., right? And you're adding to what you've already had. Or you're drafting a left tackle or whatever the case may be. And I think that's also a sound way to go about it. And I hate that everything is just tank, because that truly is you're starting all over with your entire football team.
You can't blow this up. You can't. You don't blow it up. I mean, what do you want to do? You want to go back and be an expansion team? You don't want to do that.
Yeah.
You've got some value here, and you have some players here.
Yeah.
And granted, some of your best players are injured and are not coming back this year. So we know all of this. So
right.
I think we already know kind of who you want back, but at the same time, you got a 53-man roster to fill out.
Yeah.
And you definitely have some decisions to be made on some of these guys who you could bring back, or you decide to let them go and let them try, their own market in free agency. There are a lot of decisions to be made, and the only way you find it out is, to play them and to find that out. And I think you're right. That's where the small battles need to be learned to be won over the course of the next 9 weeks.
Yeah.
Is, all right, so, hey, we saw some improvement this week from Mac, or, hey, Ramondre was really running the ball way better, the last couple of weeks than he ever. Whatever battle you want to pick, you can pick one. And that's really kind of where I am on this particular issue, because I was listening to the local sports talk radio, which is, obviously all I can listen to around here. But at the same time, sometimes it gets extraordinarily toxic, as I'm sure you're aware. And so they were completely going off the rails over the fact, and the callers were off the rails going after the fact that the Patriots didn't make a single move.
Yeah.
By the trade deadline at 4:00 yesterday. And my first impression was, well, why would you expect them to? Number one, somebody has to be willing to deal with you. Number two, you have to have somebody of value to another team. And then they would come to you and say, would you take? And, we heard that there was some tire kicking potentially on, Ezekiel Elliott, and certainly some tire kicking on Josh Uche.
Yeah.
There might have been one or two others, but there wasn't a whole lot else out there.
Yeah.
And it's all right. So we're giving them up for what? Basically a sock drawer full of doorknobs. What are we giving them up for?
Yeah, I think Josh Uche is an interesting one, just because the Washington traded their 2 pass rushers, right? So Montez Sweat and Chase Young, who are better players than Josh Uche, they went for a 2nd and a 3rd round pick, which tells you probably at best Uche was maybe worth a 4th. At best.
Yeah, at best. Probably a 5th.
Right.
And I'm like, I'm not doing that.
Yeah.
I wouldn't do that. I would not do that. I would not trade Mac Jones. I think Mac Jones.
I mean, that was never going to happen.
No, and that was the one that I had 2 calls back to back yesterday. I'm listening. I won't name the station, but you can probably guess which one it was. And I just happened to be, going by. And people were livid. They were irate. I can't believe you kept Mac. It's just the most unbelievable. He sucks. He's and I'm just like, people who have no clue are the ones that call into these shows to vehemently voice their opinion. Yeah. They don't realize what the repercussions are. Now, do I want to keep Mac here for the long term and say he can be a 20-year player like Tom Brady? I doubt that that's going to happen. But until you're ready to move on and find that next piece to the puzzle, you do need to, I think, keep him around, because right now he's very cost effective.
Yeah, I mean, not even that. To me, trading Mac Jones right now is is trading low. Like, it's giving away him at his
why
lowest
would you
point.
unless you could get, I don't know, what would you take for Mac Jones? Would you first of all, I think I'd need a quarterback. Somehow, some way, although I guess you could go with Bailey Zappi and Malik Cunningham, but that didn't seem like a hell of a lot right there, to be honest with you. What would you take for him? A third or a fourth round pick? That's not good enough. He was a first round pick.
Yeah. No, you can't. You got, if you're going to trade Mac Jones, then if that's the plan, like, let's say the plan is
they've decided,
they've decided
he's
not it, right, and we're going to move on.
Right.
If you're the Patriots, you hope that he tears it up in the second half of the season. You hope he tears it up. It will be fake, to you. It will be inflated stats or against bad defenses or whatever the case may be. And you hope that value just goes up and up and up and up. But after last year and the first 8 games this year, his value is 0. Yep. So why would you trade him now?
You don't.
Yeah, it just never made any sense. Not to mention that they hate all the backup quarterbacks. Like, I don't mean personally. I just mean they don't think any of them can play.
No.
So they're not starting Bailey Zappi the rest of the year. Like, that's just they cut the guy. Like, they clearly think nothing of him as a player. So what were they going to do? And I get people, then they would lose every game and that would be good. But that's not good.
No. All right, before we get back to Washington, because you obviously talked about the 2 big moves that they made at the traded deadline, I think we need to talk about the 800-pound gorilla in the room being Josh McDaniels. You know, 1 o'clock in the morning Eastern time. He was fired by Mark Davis.
That's what bad organizations do.
I'm just getting ready to say. It seems to me that they fired the wrong guy. But you can't fire the owner because he can't get his way out of a paper bag without doing something stupid. Yeah. And this is stupid.
Yeah.
Now, you don't have to like the way that things have gone. In fact, I don't know too many people who would be Raider fans who would really be enamored with things, but he's not even through his second year yet.
Well, it was getting bad there. It was getting toxic.
I've heard the stories, just like, you have, and you can read on, Twitter, and you can read on, various and sundry.
Yeah, I thought Albert Breer had a really good summation of it on MMQB today, if you're interested. But it had gotten bad in Vegas, but more so than that, I was joking with you earlier about these 9:15 a.m. Bill press conferences. So I was up this morning at 6:15 to get to come and listen to Bill talk about the trade deadline, and I look at my phone and the Raiders fired Josh McDaniels and Dave Ziegler, and then I look at the tweet. And it's a 1 a.m. timestamp.
Yeah, right.
And I'm just thinking to myself, I'm like, what a coward thing to do in the middle of the night
to do that. Yeah.
And look, it's not just the Raiders. Like, teams do this stuff all the time. I remember 2019 Patriots opener against Pittsburgh here, and the Patriots had just signed Antonio Brown, I believe, the day before. He didn't play in the game, but the day before. Then they had their opener. And they beat the Steelers pretty handedly, like they always did with Tom. And the Red Sox announced right after, as I was standing in the locker room post game, that they had fired Dave Dombrowski. And so they clearly, it's like when you fire somebody on parade day, right? Like you're clearly burying the story, and that's what this reminded me of. And I guess maybe I'm sensitive more to it because I've covered Josh McDaniels and I respect him as a human being, so I wouldn't just do that to somebody. But I know where we're going with this, so I'll refrain. But
no, that's quite all right. I want you to be able to tell me how you feel about it, because that's kind of leads me into what I was going to ask anyway.
Yeah.
And the question would be, do the Patriots still think enough of Josh and or Dave Ziegler to bring one or both of them back within the family fold, so to speak, and let them work here? Now, I don't know what they feel about their own personal careers, because I'd be surprised if Josh ever becomes a head coach in the NFL again, based on his track record this far. Is this enough for him? Or does he go try the college route, or does he try to do something else, or does he go into something else completely? I'm just kind of curious to your thoughts on that, and should the Patriots kick a tire on someone who's very familiar with the inner workings here, and can he make things better?
Yeah, so if it was as simple as will he make us better football team, yes or no, then I would say yes, right? I think that the one thing that I really would be interested in bringing McDaniels back for is the run game. His run game is fantastic. And I know that they didn't run the ball particularly well in Vegas this year, but they obviously had the rushing champ last year with Josh Jacobs. And in 21 was by far their best rushing season in probably 3 or 4 years, not to mention 20 with Cam Newton, where they ran the ball like crazy too. But he's always designed a really, really good early down run game and play action, marrying it together, the gap schemes and the fullback and all this stuff. And I think that they could use that. I think that they could use some help in that regard because, let's face it, I think that there is something to be said for the fact that Ramondre doesn't necessarily look like the same guy in terms of his explosiveness as compared to last year.
True.
But also, I don't think that anybody predicted that the Patriots wouldn't be able to run the ball like this.
No.
So maybe him, and I also, I think he might stay on. Bo Hardigree is taking over as the offensive coordinator, and it sounds like Carmen Brasillo, their offensive line coach, is going to stay for now with Vegas. But I would be very interested in bringing back Brasillo as well, because for all of like the post Scarnecchia issues on the offensive line, Brasillo took over as the permanent, like full-time offensive line coach in 21, but they had good lines in 20 and 21 under him here. So he's a good line coach. I think he knows what he's doing. So those two things, and it was Ziegler. But just quickly with McDaniels, like you mentioned, like it's. If it was that simple, like, does he make you a better football team or not? I would probably say yes, he would. He would help. But I think the problem is that there's too many cooks in the kitchen at that point. And I'd also say it kind of undermines Bill O'Brien.
Of course it does.
Yeah.
100%. And that's why I asked the question, because if you actually brought Josh in, I don't know, before the end of the year or whatever, what does this do to Bill O'Brien? And is that fair? And do you do that to some? I don't know. All's fair in love, war, and football? I don't know.
Yeah, it's definitely fair. And I think if you're Mac Jones, and this would be my biggest concern, like last year where you had Patricia, Judge, Belichick, all these voices in your ear telling you things. It kind of creates a situation where it's like, well, am I listening to Josh or am I listening to Bill? Like who's in charge here?
You're defeating the very purpose you're bringing him in for.
Yeah, and I would say that naturally, if you're Mac, wouldn't you kind of gravitate towards Josh a little bit because that was the best football that he played?
He was here as a rookie and he played, absolutely.
Right. So I would worry about that. Now, I know a lot of people brought up 2011 where Josh was fired by the Rams, I think at that point. The head coach of the Rams was fired, and so he lost his job as the offensive coordinator, and he came back to the Patriots in the playoff run in 2011 as a consultant to Bill O'Brien. But Bill O'Brien had already made it known privately that he was going to Penn State. So he was already 1 foot out the door at that point. So they brought Josh McDaniels back in 11 knowing he was going to take over in 12.
The job anyway, yeah.
Right. So if you're telling me that internally they know that Bill O'Brien is going to Michigan State next year and he's not going to be here, then it's just like 2011. But if Bill O'Brien doesn't have another job lined up and the plan is to retain Bill O'Brien, then you can't bring back Josh McDaniels.
No,
it's just the optics of it don't work.
So that would tell you, if Josh somehow does reappear in the Patriot offices, Bill O'Brien ain't going to be here. That's what I think.
Yeah, I would say so as well. And I think the same thing for Ziegler, just really quickly with him. Like, that was Matt Groh's former boss. Dave Ziegler was in Matt Groh's chair.
Yeah, and what a position do you put him in?
You're right. And so it's kind of like, Dave Ziegler's like over his shoulder, like just waiting in the wings to swoop in if Matt Groh F's up, Yeah. So as much as I think that as much as I think that Ziegler could maybe help them, especially on the pro side, I think that's more where his background is pro personnel. It is a sticky situation because Elliott Wolf's here for that and Groh is here for that, and so now you have again similar situation.
All right, but before we move on, I got to ask you real quickly about the Redskins. Okay, that's one. Damn. I just did that, right?
Yeah, you did.
Hang on.
I hear I stood up for you too.
I know you did. All right, so that means the next one you lose the bet. All right.
Yeah.
The Commanders game on Sunday, having traded away arguably two of their best defenders. And I don't know what this says about Sunday's game, other than the fact that, well, it's the next game that you got to win on this list. Otherwise, what happens?
So,
and can anything still happen at this stage?
Yeah, so big picture, which team actually cares and wants to win this game is probably going to win.
This could be about a 13-7 special.
Yeah, but that being said, I think the easiest way to do this, because let's face it, both these teams are not very good, right? So it's not like I'm coming at it where I think that there's all these matchup minutiae to talk about. But my concerns, I think, is the easiest way to put it if you want the Patriots to keep trying to win. My concern would be, number one, they still have Jonathan Allen and Deron Payne coming up the middle. And what we have seen with Mac Jones is that if you get that push up the middle, the pocket, he becomes jittery in the pocket. And I'm looking at a rookie at right guard in City So, and I'm looking at Cole Strange, who certainly had his ups and downs in the first 2 years of the season. And those are two Pro Bowl tackles that are going to be coming right after Mac Jones. So that concerns me. It does. Offensively, what concerns me is that Eric Bieniemy, the offensive coordinator for the Commanders, is really freaking good at his job. And they run a system he runs the Andy Reid system. It's the Andy Reid offense. So that Andy Reid offense, whether it's been Nick Foles with the Eagles in the Super Bowl, Alex Smith, Patrick Mahomes, it hasn't mattered.
Nope.
The Patriots have had problems schematically with the Andy Reid offense. Mm-hmm. And I think that the Commanders, they're not talent deprived on offense. They have some receivers. Terry McLaurin is a really good receiver. Jahan Dotson's kind of coming into his own. Curtis Samuel, if he's healthy, I know he left the game last week, so I don't know if he's 100%. Curtis Samuel is a nice gadget player. Logan Thomas is a sneaky good red zone target at tight end. So they don't have, they're not one of these teams that has no weapons and has no talent. And you put that on top of the fact that they have a really good, they scored 31 points last week against the Eagles.
Yep.
So
that's true. They did.
I am worried a little bit about this game in terms of pressure up the middle, and Bieniemy is going to have the the Super Bowl game plan from Philadelphia, the game plans they used in Kansas City against this Patriots defense, and he's going to have all of those man beaters ready,
Then why is Washington 3-5?
I think there's a couple reasons. One, their defense has terribly underperformed. I don't even know what the right adjective is. They've vastly underperformed on defense. They're 31st in the league in scoring defense right now, with a defense that has talent on the defensive line, especially. So that's why they broke up their roster construction, was because they were built on the defensive line. Those four guys across, Young, Allen, Payne, Sweat, were making like a combined $100 million. And they were 31st in the league in defense. Yeah. So they had to break it up from a roster construction standpoint. Offensively, I hate to blame it all on him, but Howell's been inconsistent. And they've had some issues on the offensive line.
Sammy Howell.
Yeah, they've had some issues on the offensive line too. But in general, they've taken 41 sacks through 8 games. Man. So those are some of the reasons why they are where they are.
Can you imagine if Mac had taken 41 sacks?
So Howell's been sacked 41 times.
That's what I mean.
Daniel Jones is second.
He'd be a grease spot on the highway.
Daniel Jones is second with 28.
Whew.
So he's been sacked 13 more times than the next quarterback. Yeah, it's not been good.
All right. Thanks, buddy.
Anytime.
Always appreciated. At EZ Lazar on X. See, I didn't say Twitter. There you go. All right. Coming up in the program, Ben Volen from the Boston Globe will join us. Ben Standig, who covers the Commanders for The Athletic, will join us in a little bit. Russell Baxter in hour number 2 on week 9 already around the NFL. And Ben joins us here from the Boston Globe. Hey, Ben, how are you? Thanks for the time today.
I'm doing a little bit better than Josh McDaniels today, I assume.
Yeah, that is obviously a part of our conversation today, because it's pretty easy to see that, where Josh has had his success, it's been here. And I wonder if, the Patriots pick up the phone and place a call, or do they just kind of let things chill for a while and then maybe Josh picks up the phone and says, hey, you need any help? I mean, I don't know how you really approach this, and should you even approach it? Is it the right thing to do, especially when you're trying to build toward, at least a little bit in a different direction with a guy like, Bill O'Brien?
Yeah, I think ultimately, big picture, Josh McDaniels would probably love to return to New England, bring his family back, re-enroll his kids in the schools that they grew up in and reconnect with their friends and all that. So I do think stability would be important for him and coming back to a place that he knows. But I don't think it's going to happen in season this year.
Yeah.
I think Evan mentioned it before. There's too much shadow there if you bring in McDaniels to kind of consult right now with, kind of looking over Bill O'Brien's shoulder. That's not good optics. Too many chefs in the kitchen. I don't think Bill O'Brien would really appreciate that. And frankly, I think McDaniels probably, as most coaches do at this time, just wants to decompress.
Yes.
I mean, he is getting a nice buyout from the Raiders. And
yeah, they got to pay him for
coaching again.
Ben, they got to pay him for 4 years. That's extraordinary.
Yeah, I mean, no one knows the exact details of the contract because coaches' contracts usually don't get shared. But, yes, it does sound like Mark Davis is going to be paying a big fat buyout, not only to Josh McDaniels, but Dave Ziegler and other members of that coaching staff, too.
Isn't he still paying on John Gruden?
Well, so I wrote this in the Globe. So, to me, firing McDaniels right now, I think it kind of opens the door to maybe John Gruden returning. I mean, you look at Mark Davis, he's already paying a big fat buyout to John Gruden. He still had 6 years left on a 10-year deal, and now he's paying a buyout to McDaniels. And Gruden, who is suing the NFL over his termination, is winning in court. He's beating the NFL in court, and he just won a key decision over the summer to keep it in court and not have the lawsuit move to arbitration. So I don't know. I mean, Mark Davis didn't want to fire John Gruden to begin with. He was basically held at gunpoint, forced to do it by the NFL. I don't know. I think there's a scenario now where Gruden agrees to drop the lawsuit and the NFL
and gets his job back.
Allows the Raiders to reinstate John Gruden.
That would be crazy, wouldn't it? I mean, it would be a sideshow. Perfect for Sin City in Las Vegas, without a doubt. I mean, 3-ring circus, the whole 9 yards. But at the same time, that would leave me shaking my head on that one.
It'd be tough, especially because they'd have to, bring up the whole all the circumstances why Gruden was fired in the first place.
Right.
But I don't know. Time does heal wounds, and the Raiders, they do have some minorities in key positions now in the organization, and I don't know. I do see a scenario where they could, Gruden would come back with his tail tucked between his legs, offer all kinds of public apologies, and then they would try to hopefully just kind of move on because of all the that team is a mess right now. It needs a total rebuild. And what coach worth their salt is going to go there when they just saw that McDaniels was just whacked after a year and a half, didn't even get a chance to see anything through? Mm-hmm. The one guy that would get the fans excited again would be Gruden. I mean, I think the Raider Nation still loves Gruden. That would be the one guy that would excite everyone.
Sure.
So, to me, right now, it's just kind of speculation, but I think there's a path there for Gruden to return.
All right, so, where, does, whether or not Josh McDaniels does end up back this way, or if he takes some time off, which certainly makes a lot of sense to me, at least at this stage of the game, before he decides to jump back into something right away. Fact remains is that the trading deadline came, it went, New England did nothing. I was not surprised by that. I don't think you were either, were you?
I don't know. I wasn't surprised that they didn't have a fire sale. I didn't expect them to trade everyone off. I mean, Bill Belichick wants to win games and keep his job this year, so he's not going to just make the team worse and trade off guys for 4th and 5th round picks. I thought maybe, a deal could have been made. Josh Uche's name was certainly thrown around a lot. At the end of the day, though, I think Patriots fans should be glad that they didn't have a fire sale because a big reason this team is in the predicament it's in is because they haven't been retaining their own players. Mm-hmm. They have been drafting and developing some good players, and then they let them all get paid by other teams, whether it's Joe Tooney or Chandler Jones or Logan Ryan, J.C. Jackson, Jacoby Myers. The list over the last 8 or 9 years is very lengthy, and the Patriots need to start operating like the other 31 teams. You need to spend money on your own players and retain your own talent especially the NFL, they have spending minimums, and free agency is like a wasteland now. We're seeing it this year. It's all B-level free agents. It's guys that teams don't want anymore. It's hard to really build a team through free agency. You could find an impact guy here or there, but you don't want to have to rely on free agency to build your team. And to spend money, you got to spend it on your own players, your own star players. So guys like Kyle Duggar, Mike Onwenu, Josh Uche, they need to retain these guys. They need to spend money. And, yeah, they might have to overspend a little bit for Kyle Duggar. But he's a playmaker. He's a guy that you've developed and a part of your culture now, and you need to retain guys like that. So I think Patriots fans should be hopeful that, yesterday's trade deadline inactivity, the fact that they didn't do a fire sale, is at least a sign that the Patriots are going to try to start retaining their own players because they've let way too much talent go out the door.
But are they retaining, at least in this particular instance, I think it's a fair question to ask, are they retaining the right players? If they retain them, are they retaining the right ones? You can make a case already that, the biggest player they probably should have retained, they let go, a guy named Brady, I think.
Well, yeah, yes, I do think they should have found a way to let Brady retire as a Patriot, especially after they got rid of Jimmy Garoppolo and let Brady kind of win that
battle
struggle. But look, we can sit here and pick apart these guys and focus on their negatives. Kyle Duggar isn't great playing in space. Mike Onwenu hasn't been able to consistently stay in the lineup. But it's also good to focus on their positives. Kyle Duggar is a playmaker. The guy, interceptions, sacks, touchdowns, always around the ball, hard hits. Mike Onwenu, a versatile lineman who can play multiple positions. You need leaders in the locker room. You need to show the players that their efforts are going to be rewarded by the Patriots, not by another team if they play well and if they develop. And, obviously it all comes down to, whether you find the quarterback and get the offense right. So, yeah, retaining Kyle Duggar in and of itself isn't going to lead to wins. But you need to start keeping your own talented players, and you need to have veterans who are invested in the team and the culture. And the Patriots right now, because they were built mostly through free agency, it's just like a bunch of mercenaries. And it's not a very talented team and guys who aren't that invested in the Patriots program.
And the quickest way I know to turn a guy from mercenary to one of your own is to sign him to another deal. Makes sense, right?
Yeah, like Hunter Henry, started his career as a Charger, but he's been here now for 3 years. He'll be 29 next year. Is he going to be an all-pro tight end? Probably not, but he's a reliable player. Whoever's the quarterback, whether it's Mac Jones or someone else, they're going to need a veteran tight end who knows how to get open. If the Patriots draft a guy in the first or second round, they're still going to need Hunter Henry to show them the way and take the pressure off them right away. So you still need to bring back some veterans. You can't just tear the team down to the studs. You can be competitive while you're rebuilding. So, I don't think the Patriots necessarily need to bring everyone back. The guy I'd be okay with would maybe be Josh Uche, who I think as a pass rusher is probably going to get a huge contract that I don't know if it's going to match what kind of player he is.
He's not a three-down guy.
Onwenu, Miles Bryant, Hunter Henry, bring these guys back and help build a culture instead of just constantly flushing the roster every 3 years.
But at the same time, and again, I'll just play devil's advocate here, if these guys are not performing on the field for whatever reason, and whenever they have the opportunity, what's the point in bringing back somebody who's not going to contribute to reestablishing your culture?
Well, I would argue the guys that I'm talking about are, Hunter Henry, his production is directly tied to the quarterback. And I personally don't think Mac Jones is the right quarterback. As for Kyle Duggar, he's playing well. He had a sack the other day and an interception, and Mike Onwenu is solidifying the offensive line now at right tackle. These are quality young players who will get signed in free agency immediately if the Patriots let them go. They're not perfect. They're not necessarily going to put the Patriots over the top, but these guys are good quality young players, and that's who the Patriots need to start retaining.
Yeah, and I guess then, in order to be able to make that decision, now is the time that these guys, if they're able to play, they need to be out there playing so these decisions can be made. And that's kind of how we open the show today. You say, there's nothing to play for. This team is 2-6. They're not going anywhere. Well, maybe not to the playoffs, but you're still looking at a significant amount of growth that this organization needs to do, which starts with some of these players, and try to make this decision on whether or not so-and-so needs to return or so-and-so needs to move on. And that process does have to start now, doesn't it?
Yeah, I hate to say it, but the Patriots are getting to a point where the players they need to be in it for themselves. It's
Yep.
not necessarily for the team anymore.
Right.
To ensure that, you have a roster spot next year, whether it's with the Patriots or someone else. I mean, the camera is always rolling. There's always film that's going to be dissected, so you never want to put bad film out there. But at the same time, I think the players now just have to make sure they look out for themselves.
Yeah.
And you might see a kid. Look, Kyle Duggar, where he's at in his career in his fourth year, he's pretty much cemented what type of player he is, whether he plays the rest of the year or not. And so I don't want to accuse him of anything, but like a guy like that doesn't necessarily need to play every last snap now. Going into free agency, he might want to take some snaps off. So those are the types of things that the Patriots are going to have to battle here in the second half of the season. What
are your thoughts then quickly on the Commanders game this weekend and what this might mean in the bigger picture, especially? I mean, I hate to put anything in a must-win or whatever situation like that because everybody thinks about that in terms of the next game, the next week, and the next opportunity. I think that time is kind of come and gone. What's at stake this weekend?
Well, the playoffs are probably a long gone at this point, so it's not like a must-win in that situation. Honestly, I think Belichick needs to win in the worst way. If he loses at home to the Commanders, oh boy, is that hot seat talk going to increase? They go to Germany and then they have a bye week after that. I mean, who knows? Who knows what could happen? I wouldn't put anything past the Crafts. If they come home from that Germany trip at 2-8, who knows what would happen? So I think Belichick, you got a reeling Commanders team coming into town that just traded away two of its star players, guys who were popular in the locker room. You saw some players kind of speak out on social media the other day. So the Patriots are, I think, fortunate. They're playing a team that even more scarred emotionally than they are, and a team that might be trying less on Sunday. Evan mentioned before Sam Howell and the sacks. Honestly, I think that's going to be the key. Belichick's going to scheme up some stunts. They're going to get some pressure. I thought the Patriots defense played a lot better against the Dolphins. Despite the score and some of the stats, I thought they fought really hard and made plays. If there was any sort of offensive production, the defense, I think, would have looked a lot better. So coming off that Bills game, and then I think they did play better last week. So I think the defense is going to make Sam Howell's life very difficult on Sunday. And so I expect the Patriots to be a classic Patriots win in the sense of the defense creates the turnovers, scores the points, puts Mac Jones in a good situation. So I am expecting a Patriots win this Sunday, and it might just cool things off around here for a little bit as they head to Germany, give them some positive vibes heading into that trip. If they do lose at home to the Commanders, man, it's going to get ugly around here really quickly.
Ben, thanks so much for the time today. Appreciate the chance to talk to you.
All right, thank you.
You got it. Ben Volin, at Ben Volin. Volin on X. All right, let's talk about the team that might be just as wounded emotionally, if not physically, as the Patriots are, and that would be the Commanders. Ben Standig covers Washington for The Athletic, theathletic.com, and Ben now joins us here inside the Patriots Playbook. I'm curious, Ben, if you heard Ben Volin's comments here. It's an all Ben day, I guess, here inside the Playbook. Was that your job, Matt? Did you do that on purpose?
Not playing that.
Well, it worked out well. Is he accurate in saying that, maybe this Washington team is just as wounded, if not, a little bit more so psychologically than the Patriots are at this stage?
It's interesting. Well, I just heard him say that Bill Belichick could be on the hot seat if they lose to this Commanders team, and that says something about where the Commanders are at, and that's stunning that that's where Bill Belichick might be at. But it's a big question, right? Obviously, they've lost 5 of 6 games. Some of those losses have been really embarrassing to some of the worst teams in the league. Mm-hmm. And now you just traded away 2 of your better players in Montez Sweat and Chase Young, and it's natural to think some of the players could be like, oh, man, where is the season going?
Right.
And we saw some of that reaction on social media after the trade. I don't know, though, if I expect to see that. I think Ron Rivera has done a largely good job at keeping these guys focused on the task at hand. The last loss they just had against Philadelphia, 38-31. Mm-hmm. The offense in particular had a pretty good game, and I think they competed and battled and all that fun stuff. They've had a lot of issues on defense already, so I can't say that's going to get cleaned up, that they've traded away Sweat and Young. On the other hand, historically, over the last 2 or 3 years, the team has actually been more disciplined and in some statistics better when some of the reserves have come in because those guys are more disciplined, I guess you could say. Like they kind of, you're the left defensive end, your role is this, and they stick to that. Whereas with before, when they have 4 guys who are Pro Bowl level players, everybody kind of is trying to get their own, even if they're working together.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's where things get out of whack. So they actually could be fundamentally a more stable group. And then, a lot of it's going to come down to Sam Howell, right? Obviously, a young quarterback still learning, but he's had some good games. His best game of the year was probably this past one against the Eagles. So I totally get that this team could come out flat and be disinterested, but I don't know if I expect that. So I think that will be interesting to see for sure.
I wanted to ask you. I'll ask you about Sam Howell in a second. But when the trades were made, on Tuesday, and Montez Sweat, and you wrote a piece on The Athletic about this, that the Commanders, I guess, largely wanted to keep him if they could. Why do you think they ultimately decided to deal him and Young both? Especially considering, mathematically, they've got more of a shot certainly than New England does, and I realize they operate in different universes, but I just found one of them maybe, but both of them, I found that a bit curious.
Yeah, I think it was. I think that wasn't the expectation, but the more we peel the layers of the onion, it kind of makes a little more sense in this regard. They opened the door to the league to say, hey, we're open to trading these guys. I think one thing that we'll realize here is while the Patriots have had the same ownership forever and been a very successful owner, obviously, the Commanders just sold their team, right, to Josh Harris taking over for Dan Snyder.
Yep.
And he only got the team literally the day before training camp started. So there was been no impact from ownership on the situation. And I'm not saying he heavy-handed Ron Rivera and said, you've got to do this. But I do think with a new owner, the future is now at least riding shotgun to the present, which was not been the case. Typically they've been short-sighted, I would say, with a lot of their moves, even predating Rivera. So this was a more forward-thinking move that realistically, yeah, we're only 3-5. Yeah, we're only 1 game out of the wild card. But realistically, we've seen too much to think that this is going to be a complete turnaround. I don't think they think they've bailed on the season because, as I said, they've got some guys at defensive end who will now step in who played. James Smith-Williams, Casey Toohill, F.A. Obata. I'm not saying they're Pro Bowlers, but they've played. They've been solid. So I think from that perspective, they're looking at it like we can still move forward here. And apologies, I just blanked on what you originally asked me.
No.
Try to get to the...
No, it's understood. I would just, if you were largely surprised, and let me give you a little bit different context on it because of the fact that Ron Rivera might need players of that caliber to help win games, which might help him keep his job in the first place.
Sure. So I think ultimately they really wanted to keep Montez Sweat. I think he's been much more reliable than Chase Young, more durable, more productive. Maybe he doesn't have the same upside, but he's been good. He's good in the locker room, all those things. So I think they wanted to keep him. But when they opened the door to trade possibilities, the Chicago Bears said, hey, we'll give you our second-round pick, which, as it stands today, would be like the 3rd pick in the second round. And I don't think anybody's projecting the Bears to go on some big run here, right? So it's probably going to be a pretty good pick. And Montez Sweat's a free agent after this year. Not saying it would be impossible to get an extension, but, I don't know. Who knows for sure? And if you wait the year and let him go for a compensatory pick, one, you may not even get that compensatory pick for a variety of reasons, and 2, you wouldn't even get it until 2025. So I think that all the circumstances led to them saying this is too good of an offer to pass on. But then why then trade Chase Young? I think the perception outside of this area has Chase Young as probably the more interesting player, the more dynamic player, the one you would keep. I don't think that's the view of a lot of people here. It's not to say that Chase Young is bad or can't reach his potential. It's to say it's been 4 years. There's injury concerns. He had a significant knee injury in 2021. There's sort of improvement concerns. He's one of those guys that I would say has won at every level he's been at, largely based on his natural abilities and athleticism, and has not always maybe work to refine his pass rush skills or do everything a pro needs to do to be at the next level. So I think they were, rather than saying, hey, are we going to tag this guy for $21 million or pay him an extension, I don't think we've seen enough to want to give that. So if you're going to trade one, let's just, we're already wet, let's just dive into the pool kind of deal. So I think that's why. If it had been reversed, if they traded Young, maybe they don't trade Sweat. But once the offer for Sweat came in, I think they decided this is too good to pass.
So they just decided, hey, as long as we're sort of in a build mode here, let's see if we can get maximum return, I guess, on the investment.
Yeah, I think so. And here's the other thing. Let's just say Chase Young and Montez Sweat were gone some time ago, and we're doing like the season preview of this team. You have two defensive tackles that were in the Pro Bowl last year. I mean, Jonathan Allen and Daron Payne. So on the line, they're not deficient from a talent standpoint. And the guys that they can fill in, again, I'm not saying that they're Pro Bowlers, but they've shown the ability to play. Like, this is as a minor example, James Smith-Williams, who's been here since 2020 as a 7th-round pick. In games, I looked this up today, in games in which he's played at least 45% of the snaps, this team is 13-5-1. Now, I don't know what was happening in those other games, but I can promise you their winning percentage is not anything close to 13-5-1 over the last 4 years. So these guys can, they're not going to get put up flashy numbers, but they do their job, and that's going to allow Allen and Payne do their jobs at a higher level. That's the thinking, at least. Yeah, and
that's certainly, as we mentioned a little bit earlier in the show, that rally actually plays right into a Patriot weakness, is going up the middle with the rush on a guy like Mac Jones with guys like Payne and Allen. So I got to ask the obvious then: why is this team 3-5 with so much talent that it had at its disposal? Is it being misused? Is it that hurt? What have you been able to put your finger on?
Well, there's always so much going on here, and even though they've gotten rid of Dan Snyder, there's still some stink from that era, just in terms of what's transpired over the last few years, and just even the football side of things, just putting everything together. I think there's been some questions about coaching. I think that's fair. I think there's questions about the front office. This has been honestly a really disaster of an off season for them. The draft class, almost nobody is contributing in any positive way or playing at all. The free agency, they didn't do a ton in free agency this year, but the players that they did sign, 2 deals. One was center Nick Gates. He just got benched last week. Right tackle Andrew Wiley, who was with Eric Bieniemy in Kansas City, has had struggles for sure. So they've just gotten nothing out of there, out of the new pieces that they added. And frankly, if you had told me before the year that they would struggle, I would assume that Sam Howell just didn't have it, rough start, whatever. He's actually been pretty solid. He's coming off his best game of the year, 4 touchdown passes against the Eagles. He's still up and downs as a young quarterback, but he's actually been pretty good. But they've just not, the defense has just been a mess. And, like I said, I think part of with the defense is like it's like, to use an NBA analogy, you have like 4 guys who all wanted the ball and all wanted to score 20 points a game.
Yeah.
You have to have somebody who's going to be set the picks, right, and take the charges, things like that. They didn't have that, and that's why I think they're hopeful that maybe having 2 role players, as it were, with their 2 stars as the tackles helps them out more. But, yeah, it's been a mess across the board. The defense, the pass protection, Sam Howell's been sacked 41 times already. It's been rough. So, yeah, there's a lot of ways to look at why this thing hasn't worked out so far.
Yeah, Howell is the one that I obviously wanted to get to next. As long as everybody's jumping on him, I might as well jump on his backside as well. 41 sacks is extraordinary. It's 13 more than the next closest team, and I'm just wondering how he's held up. How he speaks about that, how Ron Rivera deals with that. It's amazing to me the guy's even standing upright at this stage of the game.
Yeah, it's 41 sacks, and they only had 1 last week. So it was really bad.
Wow.
Prior to that. Part of the sacks is because he's been holding the ball a bit too long, trying to scan for the receivers, but he was a lot better this past week, frankly. And maybe that was also part to the play calling from Eric Bieniemy. Called for a lot of quick throws, a lot of quick decisions had to be made, and Howell was pretty good at that. Physically, he seems okay. We haven't really seen there hasn't been those moments where he's laying on the field. You're going, oh no, is he going to get up? I'm sure he's hurting to a degree, but he's been pretty good, and he's a pretty gritty player. He doesn't have highs and lows. He really seems to be, whether they're winning or losing, he seems to maintain a pretty good even keel vibe, and he's not afraid to throw the ball in places that you might think, oh boy, this is a really risky, gutsy throw, and he's not only attempted them, he's made some of them. If you go back and watch their game against Denver in week 2, he really made some throws that just like, wow, that could have been from the best quarterbacks in the league. He just has to learn, as they all do, the various nuances of the position, again, how to get rid of the ball quicker. So, yeah, he's done pretty well. And also say last week they had 2 new starters on the offensive line, and that seemed to help them in the middle of that line.
What does Washington do particularly well, and are those players still in Washington?
Good question. I don't even know how to answer that at this point.
Sorry, I didn't mean to toss that one out at you like that, but I mean, to me, it was the obvious. I'm like, well, this team still seems to have some great pieces to the puzzle, but what the hell? And I'm sure that there are Commanders fans that feel the same way.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, like if you look at the offense, like Terry McLaurin, he's not a top 5 receiver, but he's one of the better ones in the league. He makes tough catches. But even that, last week against the Eagles, he had 2 balls thrown at him. Maybe they weren't drops, but he didn't bring them in either, and that ended a drive. That was odd. Jahan Dotson, who had a great rookie year, has been much quieter this year. The previous week against the Giants, 4th down in the end zone, end of the game. Again, not necessarily the easiest opportunity, but a play he could make and didn't and dropped it. But those guys are pretty talented, and they have Curtis Samuel as well.
Mm-hmm.
On defense, like I said, with Allen and Payne, you have 2 of the better defensive tackles in the middle. So in theory, they should be pretty good against the run and things like that. But collectively, that just hasn't worked out. And, we thought the secondary was going to be a strength. You have some nice pieces. Cam Curl at safety, one of the better young safeties in the league. Kendall Fuller has been around a while. He's pretty good at corner. But they drafted Emmanuel Forbes in the first round, not instead of taking Christian Gonzalez, the whole other story. But Forbes has been getting lit up, and he's had to be benched basically at times. So it's like they have the stuff. The stuff just hasn't been delivering to the degree when you say, what are they good at? I'm like, well, what they should be good at are some of those things.
Yeah.
But it just hasn't quite happened.
Yeah. Do you put that blame on the coaching staff and Ron Rivera in particular for these guys not developing to the potential that I guess was originally believed to be possible?
I mean, I think you have to some degree, right? I mean, this would be his. If they finish with a losing record, all 4 of Rivera's season would have been under 500.
Yeah.
His career, I believe it's now 9 of his 12 years as a head coach, his teams have finished under 500. So, it's hard to argue against that to a degree. But, and I also, as I said before, I think their off-season transactions have really just not helped the cause. So, when guys get hurt or you need other people to step up, are those people doing it? Like the defensive line, even with Sweat and Young, they were fine this year. Like I'm not saying they were like a negative, but fine isn't enough when you invested all that draft capital and invested a lot of money into these guys. They have to be better, or the other parts of your defense have to step up, and that hasn't happened. Nor have they been, so imposing that they're taking over games. They did a little bit early in the year, but not so much over the course of the season. So, yeah, I mean, it's certainly a combination of the coaches and some of the players maybe just being asked to do more than they should be because of deficiencies elsewhere.
Had to chuckle when you said he's had a losing record 9 of his 12 years as head coach, because if you're Josh McDaniels, you got to be wondering, what the hell do I do to get that shot?
Well,
I mean,
you got to go 15-1 and make a Super Bowl, I guess, would be one thing. Like,
I guess that's certain.
The 3 years that Rivera had winning records that were really extreme. He
really good.
Won Coach of the Year awards, things like that. So, stuff like that helps.
It does buy a little extra time and a little extra consideration. Hey, Ben, thank you for the time today. Do appreciate it, and safe travels this way.
Yeah, I look forward to it. I've never been to Gillette Stadium, so looking forward to it. Thanks.
Well, it's all gussied up for you. We have this lighthouse. I don't know if you've heard about it or not, but we got this big lighthouse and, big old scoreboard out in the back. I'll tell you what, just ask for the clam chowder when you get here, and you'll be all set.
I think you're being serious. Okay,
I am.
Do that.
I am.
Okay.
I'm totally serious
great.
about the clam chowder. If you like the lighthouse, well, hey, good for you. It was actually pretty fun going up there. But it's there are a lot of people around here who grouse about it because they're like, well, they spent all this money on the lighthouse, but they can't, go out and spend it on the team, and it's a whole other subject.
Wait, I have a quick question. If I'm staying in Boston, how early do I need to go? I've heard the traffic is not great.
No, I 1:00 kickoff from Boston. I'd be on the road at 9 a.m.
All right. Noted.
Okay, just to be safe, if you can make it in an hour to an hour and a half, I think you're doing okay. to be honest with you.
Start tailgating 4 hours before the kickoff.
Yeah, the tailgate goes 4 hours before as well, so you should be able to get in after the initial tailgate push has gotten into the stadium, so you should be okay in that regard.
Fair enough. I appreciate it.
All right. Thanks, brother. Appreciate your time today.
For sure. Thanks.
You got it. Ben Standig, at BenStandig. You'll find him on Twitter. So that's where you can find him. He covers the Washington Commanders for The Athletic and theathletic.com. Patriots fans, if you want to see Toyota's best offers, including those not seen on TV, go to buyatoyota.com. It's Toyota's official website for deals from the official vehicle of the New England Patriots, Toyota. Let's go places. And Bridgestone is the official tire of the New England Patriots, and Bridgestone tires are now on sale through November 15th at all Sullivan Tire locations. Visit sullivantire.com for a location near you. All right, so that was a little bit of a whirlwind opening to the program. 855-PATS-500. 855-PATS-500 is the toll-free telephone number. The question that I had for you really today is quite simple, and totally blank. Russell, hello. Russell Baxter will join us at the bottom of the hour to go through Week 9 around the NFL and get his thoughts on all things trade deadline and Patriots and Commanders as well. The question I have is really simple. I got the impression, again, as I mentioned to Evan a little bit earlier, I got the impression earlier that, listening to local sports radio, and sometimes that's a good thing, sometimes that's not necessarily a good thing, but I got the impression listening to sports radio that people were really upset over the fact that the Patriots stood pat, didn't do a thing at the trading deadline. And I'm like, well, I'm not surprised at all. I'm like, I would have been shocked if they had made a deal, I'll be honest with you, even for Josh Uche. Because, again, as Bill has dryly pointed out several times, it takes two teams to trade. And unless somebody has a definitive need out there, who does New England have that can help somebody else? I would have said, not initially, well, maybe Josh Uche, could have been a trade candidate for Washington because they just traded away, their two ends, for, draft capital and return. But at the same time, see, I don't think Uche is an every down player. I don't think he has the size or the durability. That's just my own personal opinion. Now, that doesn't mean that he can't find a niche for himself. Doesn't mean that he couldn't eventually play a role, into a full-time role if he's thrust into that. Sometimes that has to happen, and you don't have any other choices. I'm just saying in an ideal set of circumstances, I'm not sure that's the case. And then the vitriol that I heard over Mac Jones not being traded, I'm like, really? And you want to play whom? Bailey Zappi? I'd almost buy Malik Cunningham before I buy that. So I'm just like, I guess either we're letting our emotions get the best of us here over being frustrated that the Patriots aren't doing anything to correct the issues, or there's just not enough smarts. There's not enough smarts out there. And I doubt that very seriously. I really doubt that. I know with this particular audience, you're way smarter than that. I just, based on the conversations that I've had with many of you over the 22 years we've done this show, I mean, I'm just like, come on now. I'm smart. Yeah, that's Godfather 1 or 2? Was that 2, right? That was Godfather 2. All right.
I can handle things. I'm smart.
One of the best all-time lines of the entire movie. I'm smart, Mikey. I'm smart. Okay? And I know you're smart. I know it. I get it. I've talked to many of you who are smart. But there was real stupid on the air yesterday. There just was. And that disappointed me greatly. And so why, if you're upset, and I'm not calling names, I'm speaking in general terms, okay? But if you were upset, were you upset for a specific reason, or just upset because it seemed like the Patriots weren't doing anything to correct the issue? And then if you're upset, like I initially was, I admit, I'm in that corner. And then the more I thought about it, I'm like, well, it makes total sense to not do a thing. I had to give that some thought. So why would a team that's 2-6 stand pat? And I think largely for a couple of reasons. Number one, evaluation, as Evan and I talked about in the opening of the program today. You got to know who's worth keeping And you may not know because it's been about winning games. But now that time is pretty much come and gone and left us for at least 2023, okay, so beyond winning games, we got to see if guys can play. Are there NFL caliber players here? And knowing that you've got this huge chunk of change on your side, heading into a free agency and the salary cap increase and everything else that you've got, you probably need to do some internal discussion over, do we have guys that we want to pay to keep? At least that's my point of view. And then I think the other issue, largely has to be, why aren't they doing anything to improve their situation? And I would tell you, well, what would you have them do? See, that kind of goes hand in hand right there. What would you have them do? I mean, they're doing everything they can do. Clearly, they're doing a lot of things that we can all agree to disagree about. Drawing up plays. The personnel. Honestly, you got to play who you got. And your best players are dropping like flies. You've lost arguably your two best defensive players, and yet I don't think the defense was complete. I think the defense actually played pretty well last week against Miami. I do. I think the defense, with the exception of maybe New Orleans, has played pretty well all year long. And so they're missing two really good players, but what would you do to fix that issue? And I think then, and we've discussed it on this program many times. So a lot of the problems that, this Patriot team, seems to be having centers around the offense. And I think we can all kind of agree on that. And it still gets back to the original premise. The offensive line has not been good. And the offensive line's case of heebie-jeebies, giving Mac Jones a case of heebie-jeebies or happy feet or whatever you want to call it, that's been a main reason why he's been so inaccurate and why he's thrown off his back foot and why he's rushed his throws, why he throws across his body. And, my God, if he throws to the left one more time, I think we're all going to let out a collective scream. I mean, he even knew it. He said it in the game after the game on Sunday. I knew the second I let it go was wrong. Well, then why'd you throw it? Sometimes the logic defies me. So we know where the mistakes are being made, but there's no corrections. How would this team have done it 10 or 12 years ago? And my answer to that is Tom Brady. He made up for a lot of mistakes. He covered up a lot of errors. Way more errors, I think, and I would also tell you that a lot of guys wanted to play with Tom, as I think we can all recall, right? And so there was a different caliber of player in here. That doesn't mean these guys are bad. Doesn't mean these guys are no good. To me, what it means is these guys don't understand fully the Patriot way. Whatever the hell that means, they hadn't gotten it. And I'm not sure there's anybody around still to teach it. I would say Matt Slater, but then, hey, when they did the whole, celebration thing in the locker room, it was Jabril Peppers that took it over a couple of weeks ago. You probably saw the video here on the website. And it wasn't, how we feeling about it. It was just like family on three, 1, 2, 3, family. Okay. I think it's great. I think it's great that and we said this last week on the show, it's good that there are new leaders that are stepping up. But new leaders bring new styles. New styles bring different beliefs. And if belief doesn't jibe with what worked in the past, it's automatically going to be, scrutinized. And so what we have here is a confluence of a lot of different things. And let's not lose sight of the fact that while the struggles certainly have begun and largely ended with the offensive line, because I think if you had an all-pro offensive line in front of you, there's a lot of throws that Mac doesn't make, trying to make plays, because I think that's where he gets into trouble. He tries to do something that he probably isn't capable of doing, and that's when he gets into trouble. And he also has receivers that aren't capable of going and get the ball. With all due respect to guys like Devontae Parker and Juju Smith-Schuster, those guys don't have what they once had. Juju's going to get a chance to prove if he's got anything left in the tank at all, because Kendrick Bourne is gone for the year now. So he's going to get a shot, And to that, I would just say, all right, show us what you got. Are you worth keeping around? Are you worth, are we wrong about you? Were you damaged goods before you got here, which is what everybody seems to think and seems to believe now. And right now we have no reason to believe otherwise. It was strategically, right now, not a good move. Paying him the money as opposed to, say, 16. So I'm just saying, there's just so many different pieces to this puzzle. But the bottom line still is that the offensive line has been a work in progress. They still haven't had all 5 of the original starters that they had foreseen to be starting. They haven't had them on the field yet together. They've had bits and pieces here and there the last few weeks, but I would also argue that that really hasn't been the big problem the last few weeks. When you get beat up, you get gun shy. When you get, ensconced in battle and you absorb blows, for whatever reason, I mean, you get a little gun shy after a while. It says nothing about your personal pride. It just says that, hey, you're a little wary. You know where the shots are coming from. And so, you become a little bit more leery, I guess is probably the proper word to take here. And so even if things are improving in front of Mac, he still doesn't know where those shots are coming from. It's the whole, I'm seeing ghosts out there, that we saw for, playing the Jets a few years ago, with Sam. I have really racked my brain trying to figure out how this thing has gone off the deep end when nobody, and literally nobody saw this coming. And so that's why I kind of open it up to you at this particular stage of the game. What do you want to see? Number one, if you were upset that they didn't make a move, why were you upset that they didn't make a move for the trade deadline? And what do you want to see from this team over the course of the next 9 weeks? It's a long way to go. And that doesn't count, in 2 weeks there's a bye week. So there's a reevaluation, period in here that, the team is going to have to go through once they get back from Germany. All right, let's get back to the phones. And Eldred's driving around somewhere in North Carolina. Hey, Eldred.
Hey, Mr. Legend. I'm off today.
Good for you.
Yes, sir. I'm off today, enjoying a nice, cold North Carolina day.
Good for you. Well, except for the cold day, I know. But we've got that here, too. It's 44.
I was going to say beer.
44, cold beer is what I'd rather have. But, it's 44 degrees and kind of clammy cold here, so I got you.
It's about that way here.
Yeah.
Yes, sir. It's about that way here, about 40-something degrees. Total warm-up to about 50, and then get back down to 29 tonight.
Oh, so, I'm not ready for that.
Yes, I'm not ready for that either, but but I got to go back to work tomorrow and fight in it, though.
All right, baby. But, be safe out there.
Yes, sir. But me, a lot of people mad about Jones. I think we should have traded him, sir, because he broke. He's broken. He's like you said, he's gun shy.
But what do you replace him with? What do you replace him with, Eldred? We got to be real. What do you replace him with?
I'm gonna be real with you. I ran a scenario by PU yesterday. They sort of laughed, but they gave me one more. But Minnesota is in a chase position. See if they give you a 2 or 3 for him. Take it.
Well, if they would give you a 2 or 3, but that doesn't solve Minnesota's problem, and it doesn't solve New England's problem.
It does solve New England's problem.
No, it doesn't. You still don't have anybody playing quarterback. You have nobody to play quarterback.
You ain't let me finish.
All right.
Okay. Then you go trade for either Heineke or Jacoby Brissett. They banned the ship until our draft choice. Then you go after another quarterback because. I don't care if you put Terry McLaurin or DK Metcalf or even the other guy at wide receiver. He ain't going to hit him because, like I said, throwing off his back foot, he's seeing ghosts, and he's throwing all the way across the bone, across his body. Mm-hmm. And the wide receivers we got, we down Bourne, you down Parker's out, right? Bourne, Parker.
Well, we think he will be, yeah.
Yeah, well, okay, you need another receiver. Tyquan don't seem to be the answer. Okay, you ain't played Booty all year, but a couple of times, he goes against Miami, he didn't get his feet in a couple of times. Mm-hmm. I guess he thinks he's still playing college ball. Well, you got to play them now. Well, you could have tried to trade somewhere and got either, I don't care if they wanted a 2 for Judy and something else, I'd have tried it. I mean,
See, that's a lot of wheeling and dealing. Eldred, everything you say actually does make sense. I won't deny that, but I would tell you that's a lot of wheeling and dealing. You'd make this trade, and then you're going to make this trade, and then you're going to make this trade. And again, it takes two willing parties to make deals. And if the other party senses that you need to make this trade, they're going to hold out, for extra, because they know your butt's against the wall here. And this is where trades fall apart all the time.
It takes two. Like I said, it takes two. But if you don't, okay then. But I guarantee you could have got that quarterback. You could have got either. And since they benching Jimmy now, and they're gonna start O'Connell since they got rid of McDaniels, because that's on the news too. Jimmy's benched.
One of the more interesting trade possibilities that I heard is maybe the Patriots should consider trading Mac Jones for Jimmy Garoppolo. I heard that one. And then I'm kind of like, okay, I've heard worse. I mean, Garoppolo's broken too, so I don't know how much that really solves you. And if you're really going to, and here's the
knows the system.
Well, yeah, okay, maybe he knows the system, but Garoppolo also makes a hell of a lot more money. So why wouldn't you, in that regard, why wouldn't you just keep Mac, because he doesn't cost your checkbook that much more? You got him next year for what, 2.7, something like that, something ridiculous. Quarterbacks don't make that. That's chicken feed.
Question, Dan. Make you another question. What if you keep him next year and he's still playing the same way? Let's say they give him a good tackle.
Then you draft a quarterback.
And they get Harris.
Then you draft a quarterback. You have to. Listen, if they've got a top 5 pick this year, if they end up in the top 5, I would seriously have to consider taking a quarterback. And I don't even know that Caleb Williams is all that. I'm not convinced he's all that. I don't think that guy, I'm not sure about it. I don't know if that guy's really a team guy. I think he's all about himself, which is fine. If that's what you want to be, that's great. But I'm not convinced that he's going to be the savior.
I'm not either. I heard you keep talking about May.
Drake May from North Carolina.
Yeah,
you ought to be able to tell us about him. Do you ever watch him play?
Yeah, I watched him play against my team. I'm a Florida State guy.
Mm-hmm.
And Jordan Travis took that team apart, so, and then that defense took May apart. So, I'm wishing, but I'd rather have Jordan Travis before I have May, to be honest with you. But I'm a Florida State guy, so I'm going to keep going with Florida State, and some of the Clemson players. But the quarterback on Clemson, I'm going to want nothing to do with it. But Jordan Travis, yes.
The Patriots quarterback is at least 2 or 3 years away. His name is Arch Manning.
Archie Manning's son.
No, it's Archie Manning's grandson. It's the nephew of Peyton and Eli.
Nephew of Peyton and Eli.
Mm-hmm.
That's 2 years away. So
probably at least 2 years away. Yeah.
He's 2 years away.
Mm-hmm.
Well, maybe not. But I never thought about him. But all the quarterbacks coming out this year, some of them. They're athletic, tall, athletic, strong arm. You want somebody to move. Matt can't move. But the reason why I say get rid of Matt, like I said, he's broken. He don't trust the system. I don't think he trusts the players. And like I said, I'm watching too many games where I'm seeing guys. I know I'm seeing on TV. They look wide open, but he's throwing somewhere else with triple coverage. Mm-hmm. And even the announcers say that. And then they go back show the same play. If you throw looks on here. Parker's open, Bourne's open in the end zone for a touchdown, or whatever. He's not seeing it because he's trying to get out of there before he get hit again.
Mm-hmm.
And he ain't trusting the system, and he ain't trusting nothing else. So I think it's best for him to have a fresh start somewhere else and try again.
I don't.
The quarterback at the beginning.
Yeah, I don't really. I don't. Yeah, the whole fresh start idea, sounds good in theory. I'm not sure in practicality whether or not that's what the Patriots really need. The Patriots have to be selfish in this regard. So unless you're getting, some kind of value back that, is at least,
second round pick.
Well, something. I mean, come on. He was the number 15 pick overall.
Yeah.
So I'm not going to give him away for a ham sandwich. I'm just not going to do it.
Nope, I wouldn't either. But you ain't going to get a first for him.
No.
He ain't performing like that.
Well, listen. If someone offered him, if someone offered them a late first round pick, I'd have been all over that like hen on a June bug.
Yeah, me too. It was a late round.
Yeah,
but
right.
Second, more realistic because they know they're going to do that unless they really need him and they close.
Mm-hmm.
But and then maybe you could start over somewhere else, and then fresh start, whatever. But I didn't like to pick it in that year or the ones that Bill been doing, except for one. That's Gonzalez.
Yeah.
And I told you that then. Between him and Quentin Johnson, I'd rather have Gonzalez than maybe get Quentin, or somebody else stuck in the third round. But we didn't do that either. We got a bunch of guards and centers. When you had Laquan Jones sit there for the fourth round. Now he's starting for Cleveland. He looking like an all-pro already.
Yeah.
But you could have had him on the right side.
Yeah, you could have.
You passed him 4 times.
Yep.
But
We're
my
really
question is this, Mr. Legend.
we're really good revisionist, coaches and scouts here. I think we really are. We like to look back on things and say, "Hey, that was a screw up. That was a screw up. That was a screw up." And it's easy to say it was a screw up after the fact, right?
No, like I said, I had my own little board. Told you.
I gotta see Eldred's big board. We need to see Eldred's big board. When can you bring the truck up this way, and make a run so you can come in the studio and we get to see your big board?
I know what I can do.
Okay.
I can make a big board and screenshot it to your Instagram account or Facebook account.
All right.
This is who I will get. This, and this.
Fair.
And,
all right.
and
I'd
like
love
I
to
said,
see it.
Guys, definitely. Quentin Johnson looked a little good the other Monday night, but he's slowly coming along. But then again, like I said, I wanted Gonzalez anyway till my boy got hurt. but let me ask you a question, Mr. Legend, and I'm going to let you go. Okay.
Go.
Let's say we got the top 5th or 6th pick in the draft. Bill's still here.
Yep.
And I don't care who he put down like, well, I don't make the person, I'm coaching. No, you make all the decisions. Would you trust them to do the right thing in this year's draft coming up? It's going to be heavy in medium in quarterback, a little bit heavy in wide receivers, and some corners.
That is.
I don't know about the edge work yet, but I'm just wondering.
That is a legitimate question, and I have to tell you that my legitimate answer is I don't know, because I have a lot. I have a lot of doubt. I absolutely have a lot of doubt, and I know where you're going with that, and I'm with you on that. I mean, there's a part of me that said, you know what? Listen, Josh McDaniels, I think, just got fired from the Raiders for less than what Bill has done with the Patriots, and and other coaches have lost their jobs for much less than what Bill has done. But Bill has also built up a lot of he's built up 22 years of goodwill and 6 Super Bowl trophies, I might add. So I mean, there's a part of me that hey, what have you done for us lately? It hadn't been very good, and we need to try to do attitude here. And then there's another part of me that's saying, all right, Bill, here's your chance to. Here's your chance to
make it right.
Exactly,
okay.
Before you do right off into the sunset.
Okay, I done said this 100 times. You laughed again. He didn't do it by us. It was 12. It was 12 the whole time. 12 gone. 12 won a Super Bowl without him, and look where we at now.
I know. Listen. You can't argue that.
Argument.
I know it's not an argument. You're right.
And every time, like I said before, of all-pro quarterback league. That coach still there. It takes that team 5 to 10 years to get back to sometime later. Dallas ain't got back yet.
That's true. Yeah, that's true.
That's NFL facts. There's nothing else we're making up. That's NFL facts. Even the greatest one got fired. Shula, Tom Landry. After their quarterback gone,
they all they all met the same
and
fate.
They record like this. Yeah, same fate. They can't get back to the winning way.
Right.
It was that guy. And Brady made everybody circle the wagon. That's one thing we ain't got in New England right now.
No.
Somebody to make everybody accountable and cover the wagon, circle the wagon.
That's true.
We don't have that now.
No, well, I would tend to agree with that, which is why I would be, cautiously optimistic, very cautiously optimistic over, letting Bill have the reins to it all. Eldred, I love you, brother. Thank you. You be safe out on the road. Claire in the UK. Nice to talk to you, Claire. How are you?
Hey, Ricky. Hey, Marie.
Hey, girl.
What's happening?
Oh, busy. All this thing, staying up late, waiting for the trade deadline, being tired today. I'm over-caffeinated and underslept.
So what was your initial impression of doing nothing at the trade deadline? Were you that devastated or what?
Oh, no, I was actually kidding. I didn't actually stay awake just for that. I just am sleep deprived today. But no, I was fine because my concern was that they were going to sell off pieces that I feel are necessary to build a core, like for the future. Maybe not these elite, sparkly players that people sort of, the playmakers or the weapons, as people like to say, but the core that you need, the stability, the strength, the backbone of a team, the reliability in the likes of Duggar and Peppers and Hunter Henry, Mike Onwenu, those sorts of key players that you still need. So I'm glad that they didn't sell off those. So I was completely fine with the lack of activity.
Yeah, and I kind of was too. I mean, that's really how I looked at it, and more so, from a snarky point of view, like, well, who the hell are they going to trade? Who wants some of these guys the way that they're playing right now? But at the same time, trying to look at it as a business, I'm kind of like, well, no, because what you really need to do is you need to determine what you have on down the road and whether or not somebody is worth keeping. And because you have to have somebody on the team. You can't just have a fire sale. You can't have a garage sale. You can't, just let everybody go for, a bag of peanuts. You got to be able to have somebody that you can build around. Otherwise, then you really haven't done your job. And I don't think the job that they've done has been that egregiously bad. I think this is just, like I said earlier, a confluence of a lot of bad stuff that's happened kind of all at once. And the fact is that, and we really tend to forget this, this was a tough schedule for this team to take this year. It's just the way that, the dice rolled and the way that the schedule rotation came up and how other teams have reformulated themselves. But it just, you combine the fact that you're still on the bounce back, going up against teams who are extraordinarily good, and you put some injury in that, you put a lot of indecision, and you put some lack of development, and probably some poor coaching or poor decision-making, whatever on there, and it's been a little of this and a little of that, and it's just become a real big mud pie is what it's become. And so now how do you fix this issue? Well, let's just take it one step at a time because the coach ain't going anywhere, although – listen, I guess Mr. Kraft could pull a Mark Davis and decide to, haul off and fire him at 1 a.m., but I think, we'd all be extraordinarily surprised. I'm not surprised that happened, with Vegas because that's just who the Davis family is. And it was that way when his dad owned the team. So, but, I don't know. If the Patriots went 2-14, 2-15, if they lost the rest of them, could that possibly happen? I'd say maybe, sure. I don't think that's going to happen.
On the circumstance.
What's that?
Sorry. I think it depends on the circumstance. If they are, like you said, 2-14 and stuff, but it's because they have been testing out all their young players. They've been trying to establish what works in the offense, what doesn't work, what works on defense, what doesn't work, who works. I think if you've got a losing season to that significance, but something is going on, as in development, trial, then maybe it's not quite his head on the chopping block, as if it was a case of it appeared that they were trying to play their best football and they were just shocking. But like you said, I think the big key with the offense, I think, the team as a whole, is they've really looked out this season with injury. All the injuries, the significant injuries come in sort of at the same time, and the O-line not being able to have time. You've got guys going in and out with injury, so they can't work together as a cohesive unit because the one goes out with injury, then he comes back, but then another one goes out, that sort of thing. And it's just, you put in that kind of crumbling wall in front of a quarterback that has spent the last 3 years going through, I don't know, the washing cycle of ups and downs and different this and different that. If you stepped back and wasn't a Patriots fan and looked at that on paper and said, this is what happened to the quarterback, this is what they did on coaching, this is what is happening with all the O-line, and now these are all the injuries that they've got, how would you look at that as a list and say, oh, that team could be successful, regardless of who their coach is and things like that?
Yep.
Is my point.
Yeah. I mean, it causes you to stop and think. Listen, I've been doing a lot of thinking about this a lot lately and trying to sort of pinpoint, what's the next best step to take. I mean, and granted, it's above my pay grade, but I mean, for the first thing that I got to do is I got to figure out, all right, is there anybody on this thing worth keeping? Is there anybody right now?
I think there is. I think that's key. I think there's plenty. That's why it's so frustrating. I think there's plenty there that could be successful. It's just you can't get everything to work together because there's always something in the way, like for instance injury or something.
Well, that certainly injury is a big part of it. You're absolutely right, and that sort of stunts the growth and the comeback effort and all that stuff. So, I just, you're not going to be able to do it all right away when you want it done. It's going to be a long, laborious process, and and I think honestly, I think it starts this weekend with Washington. I really do. I mean, I'm not so much. I mean, yeah, everybody wants to win. You don't want to lose because this is a bottom line business, and you have to win games and ultimately to be successful. But at the same time, I think Bill avoids any extra scrutiny if this team wins, number one, but number two is just playing better. If you see execution, if you see things that, frankly should have been taken care of back in August but weren't, but if at least you're seeing them and you can feel better about this team, before all is said and done this year, then, yeah, I think that saves his job, and I think this team, begins to take a big leap forward because they're going to have, the monetary wherewithal to be able to do that next year with the salary cap and the money that they've saved under the cap and all that kind of stuff. So, you can see where there is an opportunity to potentially fix it, but, everybody wants it fixed now, right away. Everybody wants Mac Jones to be the first-round draft pick Mac Jones. But the problem is that we can't erase what happened to him last year. We can't erase what's happened to him this year. He deserves to have a learning curve. It's been a little steeper than anybody would like. And then he's got others around him that have not performed up to their capabilities either. Receiver, running back, especially the offensive line, because those are the guys blocking. And so naturally he gets all the vitriol and all the anger and all the hate and all the, the venom spewed out at him because he's the focal point, and yet it's not just him. It's everybody else, that's included here. And so I think we have to try to put at least a little bit more perspective on this thing and say, wait a second, all right, let's pick this thing apart slowly and take our time in getting it right, because you don't want to make a change just to make a change. And that was what I was most afraid of at the trade deadline. The trade deadline, they're going to let somebody go. And they let somebody go just because we feel like, we got to give one away here. We got to sacrifice, a virgin to the volcano or whatever it is that you got to do these days. And no, that's not the right way to rebuild a team. You got to remember what this is all about and where this team has been and where this organization has been. If you're going to use any of your track record, as a template, as a blueprint for building again.
Maybe this is the first step. The lack of movement at the trade, the lack of panic sale, whatever.
Yeah.
The staying fixed and the looking internally to actually we won't get rid of even Joshua Uche, who I know people were sort of calling for. Maybe this is the first step. Maybe they are finally getting to that, especially after the win against the Bills.
Yeah.
How successful and the momentum was. We saw this team. That's why it was so frustrating to watch the Miami game. But hang on a second. Where's the team that we saw play against Buffalo?
Yeah.
Hang on, where's the momentum that we saw against Buffalo? We saw it. We all saw it.
Yeah, we did see it. And granted, they didn't play great against Buffalo, but it was certainly their best game of the year. It was a step in the right direction. And I would tell you that, we didn't see that for two reasons last week against Miami, largely because, A, I think Miami is a better team, number one, and number two, a faulted team, a team full of fault, is going to take one step forward and two steps back until they figure out how to correct it. Claire, I appreciate your time, and the phone call today. It's always good to talk to you. It's not a problem that's going to get solved right away. We saw, as you said, what happened against Buffalo, and then we saw what happened last week at Miami. And, I just think Miami's a bad matchup. Buffalo's a better matchup. And it's okay to say that team has you beat in personnel. The Patriots need to strive to where they're no longer beaten in personnel, but we're not going to get there tomorrow. That's really the bottom line, I think, of this whole thing.
A real woman could stop you from drinking.
You have to be a real big woman.
It's time to go around the NFL with football guru Russell Baxter.
From now on, your name is Flounder.
On Patriots Playbook.
Flounder.
Did you dress as Flounder for Halloween last night, Russell?
No, I went as a fillet of sole. So.
Right. it. I got it. I got
and
it.
I was stuffed.
And you were stuffed. Of course you were.
Yeah.
My filet of soul is always stuffed. I know, exactly. So what was the candy of choice in the Baxter household?
Well, it's funny. In my neighborhood, this is going to sound very odd. We'll get to my favorite candy in a second. We don't get a lot of trick or treaters, John.
Yeah, we didn't either this year.
I happen to live on a street that has no sidewalks.
Right.
Okay.
Same here. Yeah.
So, people don't. It's hard for the kids in our neighborhood. They go around the corner and all that stuff, which is what we used to do when we had our youngin.
Mm-hmm.
And but my favorite choice, I like to go for healthy candy. And I've always insisted that Almond Joy has fiber because the coconut is shredded.
Put the lime in the coconut.
Yeah. Now,
I
will also say this. You can't get these. They're tough to get.
No.
But my mother's favorite candy, and I'm a big fan too, is something called Goldberg's Peanut Chews.
We've talked about this before.
Yes, we have. For 23 years, my God, we've talked about that.
But those peanut chews, I've looked. I can't find them anywhere. They make them anymore?
Yeah, they still make them. Where was I? I was coming back from a Hall of Fame, and I stopped off in Pennsylvania to meet up with a friend of mine, Stephanie Koch, who's one of the people who helped run Football Past and Present seriously on Facebook.
Mm-hmm.
Along with Kelly Morey and Roger Jackson, who I used to work with at ESPN, the magazine. We're doing very well. We're getting near 1,400 people, a lot of people I know and so on. And
awesome.
I put your stuff on there as well.
Mm-hmm.
And but anyway, she took me to a place, and I think it's called Grandpa Joe's candy store, and it had everything from like the last 100 years. And meanwhile, they run Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory on a continuous stream because that's, Jack Albertson's character was Grandpa Joe.
Yeah,
and I
that's
might
right.
be butchering the name of the store, but we were in there for an hour, and it's like a blast from the past with all the older candy and different things like that. And so they were in there. Of course they were. So
Did they have Necco? Do they have Necco wafers in there?
Oh, absolutely, yes. John, I'm telling you, everything.
Wow.
Everything was in there. Anything from your past, bubble gums and the old packaging and
the little wax Coke bottles.
Yep.
Yeah, those two.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Everything.
The cinnamon jawbreakers. Ask Maureen about jawbreakers.
I know they had jawbreakers. I didn't.
They will break your jaw.
Yeah, and they will break your jaw. That's exactly right.
He cracked half a tooth, and it went up in his skull. That's why he missed here a week or two ago, because he had to, go have his tooth extracted.
An emergency dental surgery off of a jawbreaker.
Can you believe that?
Really?
Yes, really and truly, because he tried to bite a jawbreaker.
That'd be a tough guy for my kids.
Yeah. Who's laughing then? Look at Daddy.
Yikes.
Big tough Marine. Yeah, there we go. All right.
I can eat again. I'm going to hit that candy box tonight.
I love it. I absolutely love it. Russell, as you probably well know, there's still some consternation, around these parts because of the Patriots' lack of movement around the trade deadline. And to me, the trade deadline is it's kind of like trick or treat, and it's mostly trick, except for maybe one, maybe two teams if you're fortunate. But I don't know that there's a lot of risk and very little reward for most teams around the NFL. And so I'm wondering if the better part of valor here is just to kind of, hold your hand, too close to your vest and not make moves simply because, unless you know specifically the kind of move you need to make to put you over the edge and maybe give you an advantage if you're making a playoff push, why would you make it?
Oh, I agree. Listen, that's the thing that's so much fun about, first off, the game of football, first off, is the fact that there are so many ways to win and score points. Okay? This notion that I keep hearing from certain people is that, quote unquote, it's all about the quarterback. It's now an offensive league. It's now those are people who have come up with this to push their own narrative because they just want to talk about quarterbacks. Now, John, you and I have been watching football for a long time. And I heard you talking with Claire. I mean, what the hell is a quarterback without an offensive line?
Yeah.
Okay?
Yeah.
What the hell is a quarterback without this is not handball. Okay? The idea that some people want to talk about this game in this day and age and still not understand the team concept of it boggles my mind. Okay? But I understand why they do it. There's ratings and, what I call laziness. And so watch this league. Okay? If that was true, why isn't Patrick Mahomes lighting it up this year? Okay? Because he's clearly the best quarterback in the league by general consensus. Okay? And I'm sure the Denver Broncos enjoyed playing against him last week.
Yep.
Because they are devoid of weapons, and they do make mistakes. And the Chiefs, I'll use my Fredata line last week. 5 turnovers against the Denver Broncos.
Yeah.
A team they had beaten 16 times in a row. Okay? So it's more than just the quarterback. And listen, if you're going to do quarterbacks, you got a hell of a matchup in Germany this week with the Chiefs and the Dolphins.
Mm-hmm.
So we'll get to that, I'm sure, later as well.
Mm-hmm.
But if you have a lot of holes and you couldn't address them during the offseason, what makes you think that in a couple days span you're going to be able to do so? And first off, or probably more importantly, I hear a lot of people talk about, well, they didn't do this and they didn't do that. First off, you don't know if the team didn't try to make a move. Okay? Second off,
True.
Just because you want somebody doesn't mean the team's going to make them available.
Right.
Okay?
And that's what everybody seems to fail to realize. I mean, when I hear trade possibilities, well, they could have traded this guy for that guy, or why don't you get so and so to trade, for so and so, and I'm like, okay, that's all sounds good on paper, but what if the team doesn't want to trade? Number one.
John, you and I, let's just say you and I are playing poker, okay? And I have an ace, king, queen, and a 10,
mm-hmm.
and an 8. Is it all right if I look over and you said, listen, do you have a jack you can spare?
Yeah, right. Yeah, that's
It doesn't work that way.
Trades they're just, I'm like, I use my buddy Eldred as an example here. I mean, what he had to say made a lot of sense, but at the same time, it had about 3 or 4 layers to it. I mean, you can't even get through one layer in a trade, barely, much less 3 or 4. Or if they do this, then they go and do this, and then they take that, and they move it over here, and they do this. And I'm like, whoa, wait a second. What are we doing here? Are we putting together a 500-word jigsaw puzzle, 500-piece jigsaw puzzle? What are we doing? That's not what this is. You can't do it like that. It doesn't work like that.
Right.
And nobody understands that.
If you add a player, by the way, you're getting rid of a player.
Yeah.
Okay? Because you have to maintain your roster according to the rules, not the rules of your best friend, but the rules of the National Football League. So, listen, we have seen the trade market accelerate over the last couple of years. And I'm talking about the mid-season one. A lot of trades, obviously, we know take place in April, March and April. Even before things begin. But it's like, and listen, we know what the Raiders just did and so on.
Yeah, just going to ask you about that, yeah.
And whatever's deeply going on in that. But I will also remind, and I heard somebody go on a rant today, well, it's another Belichick disciple failed and so on. Listen, Josh McDaniels has made his own bed. He's been fired twice as a coach. He was supposed to go to the Colts and never did, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Okay, but I did a little math. Okay, if you include the playoffs, going back to 2003, the Raiders are 104 games under 500. Now, is that Josh McDaniels?
No.
Or the turnstile of personnel
It's Mark Davis.
I mean, this has been a dysfunctional organization.
It's Mark Davis, and he pulled the plug before this regime ever really got a chance to get going, and that's the ridiculous part of all of this.
Well, John, they haven't won a division title since 2002.
Yeah.
Okay? They haven't won a playoff game since 2002. They've only been in the playoffs twice since 2003. Okay? These are like old Tampa Bay Buccaneers type streak.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? So it's not just the recent stuff. Now you pile on the stuff that happened with Gruden and all that. And even before Mark, obviously, Al Davis, okay, God bless his soul, and in the Pro Football Hall of Fame, but he was a different kind of GM and owner, his latter stages of his life, and so on. I think a lot less patient. So this is a team that has really, or I should say a franchise that has really hit the skid. I remember doing something earlier in the summer and just talking about like kind of the old school franchises from the 70s. And, what a magical time that was. And that you look, I mean, listen, the Dolphins are having a hell of a year. John, they haven't won a playoff game since 2000.
That's crazy. You don't even realize that. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay?
Yeah.
So, it's funny because here's so much. Well, Dallas hasn't been to the NFC Championship game and won a Super Bowl since 1995. Well, the 49ers haven't won the Super Bowl since 1994.
Perspective, my friend. We have to put things in perspective.
Listen, think about this. The Dolphins are now in the 50th anniversary of their last Super Bowl title.
Right. Correct.
The Raiders are in the 40th.
That's nuts.
1973 for the Dolphins, 1983 for the Raiders.
Raiders, yeah.
Okay?
Mm-hmm.
So that's why you got to appreciate what some of these franchises have been able to do. And listen, the Steelers were terrible for about 40 years before they turned the corner. The Patriots they weren't so good, and then they've had their run as well. It is hard. I mean, this league is 104 years old. We have still only had one franchise win 3 titles in a row. And the Packers did it before there was a postseason, and the Packers did it in the mid-'60s. No teams won more than 3 NFL/Super Bowl titles in a row. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
No one's ever won 3 in a row during the Super Bowl era.
Right.
So, and now we have free agency. I think it makes it even harder. There's more parity. There's more teams that are available to jump up. There's more teams that can go from to last to first. I mean, how bad were the Texans the last couple of years? They win this week. They've already surpassed last year's win total.
Yeah, right. Half a year still to go. Right, exactly. Well, let's take a quick look then at the schedule for this week, and I guess we could start with the game that's certainly going to be in Germany, because the Patriots will be there next week against the Colts. But when you get the Dolphins and the Chiefs, you're probably talking about not just 2 of the best of the AFC and a potential AFC kingpin surviving this one. You may be talking about 2 of the best teams in the NFL going at each other at the mid-season point.
Oh, no question about it. It's funny. Every team that leads their division in the AFC right now, John, is 6-2. Jacksonville, Baltimore, Miami, and Kansas City, which I think is kind of interesting. And, of course, Miami and Kansas City, you've got the Tyreek Hill story.
Yep.
Who last week reached 1,000 yards receiving in 8 games.
Yep.
And I know there are other, but it reminded me of Wes Chandler during the strike in '82 when he had 1,032 yards. But Tyreek Hill already has more touchdown catches than he did all of last year. And last year he had a career year in terms of catches and receptions. We might start hearing too, because there's been no, at least in my opinion, there's been no quarterback this year jump off the charts as far as performance. There really hasn't. I've seen guys with a lot of yards, okay, a lot of touchdowns, but I also see quarterbacks with their shot. I mean, Lamar Jackson's had a great year running and passing, but he's turned over the ball 8 times. Now, that's a product of what they do, And people focus on his lack of interceptions, but he's fumbled the ball away 5 times.
Mm-hmm.
So you see Jalen Hurts has got a boatload more turnovers than he did all of last season. So why couldn't we see somebody like, and I know Christian McCaffrey's a little banged up right now, but Tyreek Hill and A.J. Brown, I'm not saying they're having Cooper Kupp seasons from 2 years ago, but I don't think they're that far off.
Yeah.
So this could be a year we see something, and of course, we've never seen a wide receiver be MVP. So we've seen running backs, we've seen quarterbacks, we've even seen defensive players.
Right.
Like Alan Page in 71 and Lawrence Taylor in 86.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a different kind of year. But Tyreek Hill against his old team, that's going to be pretty fascinating. Here's something that blows my mind. The Dolphins and and listen, I know that the Broncos game against the Dolphins accelerates this a little.
Yep.
But who would have thought that 8 games into the season that the Miami Dolphins would have 84 more points than the Chiefs?
Yeah, I wouldn't have envisioned that. No.
84.
Yeah.
That's
a
like
lot.
10 points per game more.
Yeah.
And Kansas City's got a little turnover bug going as well. And I'm not here to bash it because they're winning a different way. They're better defensively than they have been, even though the run defense got a little exposed last week. So this is going to be very interesting because now you got to start looking at these games with these teams obviously trying to win their division, but these head-to-heads among the leaders. Because when we get down to it, who's going to be, say they tie, where's the game going to be if they meet each other in the play?
Right.
Even though there's another matchup in the AFC where they're neither team's in first place right now, the Buffalo-Cincinnati is huge on Sunday.
Yeah, I was just going to ask you about that one, Buffalo and Cincinnati. And the other game that I think certainly is worth mentioning here, while we have a minute or two left, is Dallas playing at Philadelphia. That's certainly going to and it could very well be that the NFC East is also one of the stronger divisions and has been from top to bottom, throughout the course of this season. And I'm going to throw Washington in there as well because the Patriots get the Commanders this weekend. But I just those two games are bringing out, I think, the cream of the crop, at least at the midway point in the season.
Oh, I think it's a really dynamite slate this week. I really do because of what you get star power wise in terms of the Germany game and then the Sunday night game, or I should say the Sunday afternoon late game, which is the Dallas Philly game, and of course Buffalo and Cincinnati. So it's huge and not in divisional games, but also within the conference games, like the Miami, Kansas City is off. Jacksonville's off this week. Detroit's off. They're both leading their divisions and so on. But I think it's very interesting. And I can't believe I'm saying this. I'll be curious to see if Kansas City can keep pace with Miami. Which, Miami, it's like a track team. It really is. You look at last week against the Patriots, both Waddle and Hill had over 100 yards receiving. Tua's had a little turnover bug himself the last couple of weeks. Okay, and I get all that, but this will be a very, very interesting matchup for a lot of different reasons. And I'm certainly not to dismiss anyone at all, but Kansas City, they've won a different way this year. They don't look comfortable offensively, and that I think is somewhat troubling for them, at least right now. But my goodness, some teams still have 10 games to play. So as we have seen, unless we saw with Jacksonville last year, they were 4-8 and caught fire. Okay, and then won a playoff game. So you never listen. If you need any proof about playing well at the right time, just look at the World Series this year.
Yeah.
2 years ago, both those teams lost 100 games.
Which is remarkable.
And the Rangers are on the verge of winning their first ever World Series.
Yep.
Okay,
Yep.
I'm done with baseball. That's all I know.
Well, I'm glad you slipped in my Texas Rangers there. That's good. I
Yeah.
appreciate that. Appreciate you. Russell, thank you, my friend, as always. We'll try to figure this out again next week. Patriots get a little trip to Deutschland and see if they can't, find a little momentum this weekend against the Commanders.
And next week, I wanted to drop some Frau Blooper references, okay?
Okay. So maybe we could do some beer references too. I don't know. We'll figure it out. Thanks, buddy.
And by the way, it's Frankenstein, not Frankenstein.
Frankenstein? Okay. Frankenstein. I got it. Frankenstein it is. Russell Baxter at Bax Football Guru on Twitter. Patty and Agawam, you're kind enough to hang in there, buddy. I'm going to give you the last word here in the playbook today.
No problem, John. Unfortunately, I think I got the crappy line because I hear feedback in the background.
Oh, no.
But that's all right. I'll try and get my point across really quickly.
Okay.
So I was a little perturbed that they didn't make a move, but, it didn't really bother me all that bad because I think a lot of, the negativity that you're hearing is all cannon fodder from fans that have never experienced losing with this team.
Yeah.
And, I was an original bandwagoner on the very first Super Bowl run against the Bears. So I've been around for a while. I've been through the highest of the highs and the lowest of the lows. One thing that I brought up that Evan sort of took my point yesterday and built upon it, was better at articulating it than I did, was I would have liked to have seen him make a move for a guy like Jerry Jeudy, so they would have at least an offensive piece in place. And going forward, I think what Claire and what you were saying, if you're not picking high enough to get one of these franchise-style left tackles like Joe Walter, Fashanu, then as much as it pains me to say this, maybe you have to sign Trent Brown and take a guy like J.C. Latham and give Mac another year because, if he sucks again next year, you're not going to pick up. Well, you're probably not going to pick up his fifth-year option anyway. But
right,
you're going to be in the quarterback carousel, and I would rather see them try and build up the offense over the next couple of years rather than trade away future assets to pick a quarterback like, oh my Lord, Caleb Williams, who I'm not really sold on either.
Yeah.
If you get one of the top two picks, or Drake May, who looks like he's got the physical traits. He's big. He's got the big arm. But when I watch him, I kind of see Mitch Trubisky. And he kind of looks like Mitch Trubisky, too, and he played for the same program,
Yeah. Yeah. Patty, I knew that you're usually capable of really sound, reasoning and judgment like this, but I could not have picked you to come out at a better time in that regard because it's sound and reasonable.
Yep. And, I'm sorry. Pardon me. I've been sick. I've been fighting laryngitis and
I'm sorry.
One of my twins has pneumonia, and I got to say something to Matt. Matt, if you want to prove to your kids that you're a tough guy, you got to do what we used to do back in the day and just beat up somebody in front of them, And it can backfire.
I beat up my son in front of my daughter.
How can he beat up his kids though when he can't even beat up a jawbreaker?
Well, I was going to say, we're Marines, We may not know karate, but we know crazy, like James Brown said.
Yeah.
But sometimes, 9 times out of 10, karate wins out. So it could backfire, too. So you don't want to go, you don't want to go too crazy.
I pulled a little McMap on him.
I like it. I like it a lot. Thanks, Patty. Good to hear from you, buddy. Appreciate you. All right, that's going to wrap it up for this edition of the program. Patriots fans, if you want to see Toyota's best offers, including those not seen on TV, go to buyatoyota.com. It's Toyota's official website for deals from the official vehicle of the New England Patriots, Toyota. Let's go places. And this November, every Friday is like Black Friday at Bob's Discount Furniture. That means you get surprising unlocks every Friday of the month on top of Bob's everyday low prices. Shop Bob's Black Friday unlocks in store or online. Bob's Discount Furniture, the official furniture store of the New England Patriots. Our thanks to Ben Volen of the Boston Globe, Ben Standig from The Athletic, who covers the Washington Commanders. I guess if you took the under, you won. I'm not going to mess it up now. Thanks to Evan Lazar, Russell Baxter, Marine. Good job out of you. All right. Same Pat's time, same Pat's channel next week. Everybody's going to be in Germany but me. I'm going to be here. I'm going to hold down the fort. Talk to you next Wednesday.
Thank you for downloading this podcast. Subscribe on Apple, Google Play, and everywhere else you listen. Like the show? Please rate and review us. Listener comments and ratings help keep us high in the podcast rankings so new listeners can find us. Be sure to check Patriots.com for more news and more podcasts.